There is a very old story. I don't know if it's a true story. It's an old Greek story that a young man once had the opportunity to study under a great philosopher. And he was enthralled by the idea, what luck to be able to learn from this man. And so the day came for the young man to begin his studies, and he was escorted into a room, and he was set in front of a desk where there was a dead fish. And the great philosopher came out, and he looked at the student, and he said, "I want you to write down everything you see on the fish." And he left. The student thought it was odd, but he set about his task. Looked at the fish. It's gray. Eyes are pale. It's got fins. Mouth. He made a list. Then he called for the philosopher, and the philosopher came back and looked at his list and gave it back to him and said, "Keep looking." And he left. The student, a bit perplexed, started looking a little closer. It's like, what else am I going to see? And he started to notice, okay, it's not just gray, it's kind of blue, and it's a little pink on the bottom. And there are dots there, and the fins actually have spines. And actually, there's teeth. I didn't see the teeth. And made another list and called the philosopher. The philosopher came back and looked at it and said, "Keep looking." And he walked away. And this went on to the student's frustration for several hours until he had been able to list over 100 things about the fish that he had never seen on the first pass. And the point of the story was that sometimes we're so familiar with something that we do not take the time to really look. And I say that to begin what we're about to do this morning, which might seem like a daunting task. If you'd like to turn in the book of Genesis to chapter 37, we're going to go through a story that we have all heard many, many times before. But I'm hoping that while we're together, we will take a bit of time and look closer. I lead a men's Bible study at our church. I've been doing so for several years, and over the last few months, we have been working through the book of Genesis. We just finished it, actually. And something you find, and I will say this simply because this is not new to the men I work with. I also teach at a seminary online, and I see this a lot. When we as Christians approach the Old Testament, sometimes it can be difficult to accept some of the things that we read. It has very challenging portions. There are things that happen that are disturbing and upsetting. And I often get the question of, why is this here? So one thing I want to point out before we even get started is the Old Testament is not like another ancient historical work. It's not like the Greek works where they're elevating Achilles or Hector. It's not about great brave King Leonidas or any of those things. In fact, while we have examples of many admirable men and women, we also see that they are oftentimes very horrible at the same time. And there's a reason for that. And the reason I would give you is that the hero of this book is no man and no woman, it's God. And so when you read the Old Testament, don't look to the people, but look to God. And ask yourself, where is God here? And I think you will walk away seeing even more so how mighty and great and loving our God truly is. So as we open to Joseph, let us ask ourselves, let's ask each other, and let us ask the text, where is God? Now, I am going to do quite a bit of reading. I'm not going to read the whole story because it's, 10 chapters. But I'm going to read about 3 chapters, so bear with me. We won't do them all at one time. Genesis chapter 37. I am reading from the ESV, but it will be relatively the same in everybody's Bible. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing his flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. And then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it's your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned of his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. All right, let's stop there for a moment. So we all are very familiar with the story and what comes next, and everybody has probably grown up with some version of it. I at least go back to remember even the flannel graph of this story, and some remember the Veggie Tale of this story. But it's a very familiar tale. But what can we glean from just the beginning as we start to read to set our stage and help to understand what comes next? First, it's worth pointing out how young Joseph is. He's 17 years old. Now I assume have maybe a 17 or 16-year-old here among us. Maybe some of you have a 17 or 16-year-old in your home, or you can at least remember that age. Now, I want you to think what that would be like, both as Jacob, to lose your child, but as a 17-year-old to be thrown into a pit by your family, left for dead, and then sold to a people that don't speak your language, don't care anything about you, and want to use you for whatever purpose they need. That is a devastating, terrifying position. Sometimes we think of Joseph as being this mighty, brave man because that's how it's always displayed in the cartoons and the stories. We don't really know Joseph's perspective, but we cannot deny that at this stage, at 17, this is scary and heartbreaking. Joseph, of course, is Rachel's son. Now, at this point, if you remember the story of Genesis, Rachel has died. She died after giving birth to Benjamin, his younger brother, and she was Jacob's favorite wife. So favored that he preferred her above all the others, treated her better than all the others, and now it seems that he treats Joseph better than all of his brothers. The favoritism that destroyed Jacob's family amongst his wives continues to go on. He has not learned his lesson yet. He continues to do that, all because he still loves Rachel, even though she's gone. He is bereft of the one he loved. Now, he does this, of course, by giving Joseph this very special cloak, which only makes his brothers hate him more. But then Joseph begins to have dreams, and we know these dreams well. It's interesting that his dreams cause his brothers to hate him more because he has the cloak, and now he's having dreams about them serving him, which they think is ridiculous. But notice at the very end of verse 11 that Jacob, his father, kept the sayings in mind. It's a very interesting phrase. It only comes up in one other place, in the Greek Old Testament and in the Greek of the Gospel of Luke. We find it in the realm of Mary. When the shepherds have come to her and told her about what they saw, Mary, it translates generally, treasures these things in her heart, but it's the same phrase as Jacob keeping these things in his mind. Lest we forget, Jacob had dreams. Jacob saw angels in his dreams. He was communicated to by God through dreams. So while he doesn't understand, he doesn't quite reject it. He's not sure what this means, but he's reflecting on it. And then, of course, we have this fateful moment. Now, I'm not going to suggest that this is a better translation, but there is an interesting statement in verse 18. As Joseph comes to find his brothers, they call him this dreamer. In verse 19, here comes this dreamer. Every English translation I can find will say something along the lines of this dreamer. The word actually is Lord of Dreams. I wish we could use that. I don't think it works really well in translation, but it's as if the brothers are prophesying of his role without even knowing it. They're saying, here comes this Lord of Dreams, who he will be one day. And they hate him. They hate him. And maybe if you have brothers, maybe you can sympathize. You know, there's always the one that does better than you, and parents obviously like him better. I don't know if I've ever actually wanted to kill my brother, but there were times where there might have been. He was bigger, though, so throwing him into a pit was not going to happen. But they hate him. And honestly, we must reflect again that this hatred all comes from Jacob's special treatment. Notice that even at the end, they refer to him as your son. Is this your son, Jacob? Not our brother. So they have this plan. Reuben and Judah are the only two that we hear speak. We assume they're all in agreement, but we only hear from Reuben and Judah. And Reuben, for his own, perhaps, benefit, wants to keep them alive, wants to keep Joseph alive. He doesn't want him to die. And he devises a plan for it. Apparently he leaves for some reason. He's not present. And Judah comes up with a much more pragmatic solution. You don't make any money if we kill him. Let's at least make some money and let them kill him. And so everybody seems to think that's a great idea, so let's do that. And so they sell Joseph to these Midianites or Ishmaelites, being the same people. And of course, Reuben is heartbroken, it seems, for having lost his brother. I do wonder what his plan was, because his brothers were going to tell Jacob that he was dead, and I don't know if Reuben was going to pop up with Joseph and say, no, he's not, or what. But he is heartbroken at that loss. And of course, Jacob, it's like he lost Rachel again. So he is despondent. Now, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to wonder if the brothers thought, without Joseph there, maybe Dad will treat us better. Maybe that love that he has for Joseph would fall on us now. But the exact opposite happens. Jacob is inconsolable, and nothing they can do will bring him out of this pit that he has now fallen into. I'm reminded briefly, C.S. Lewis once talked about his camaraderie with Tolkien and several other men, and there was one in particular that he was a friend of the group that he was always jealous of, because the friend always seemed closer to Tolkien than he was in some ways, and he was always kind of jealous that Tolkien treated him a little better, made him laugh a certain way, things like that. And one day that friend died, and Lewis, he admits that he inside kind of guiltily that he thought, well, at least now I'll have more of my friend because he's gone, so I can get all those things that I was jealous of. And he found out that, in fact, that part of Tolkien died with him, that he had less of his friend because that was something that was unique to their bond. And I see this in Jacob as well. Perhaps they thought, we'll get that love, but that love was only for one, and it's gone. And so that part of Jacob is gone too. So we end on a very tragic note. Now, I'm not going to read 38 onward. We'll skip ahead to 42, but just to recount in summary, 38 is a very strange chapter. We will come back to that later on just briefly, but we have this almost odd chapter in the middle of the Joseph story that deals with Judah and a relationship, and we'll touch on that later. And some commentators even tell you it has no business being there, but I think they're quite wrong. And then we come back to Joseph, who is now in Egypt. He is now working for Potiphar, captain of the guard, and we are very familiar with this story because this is the story Potiphar's wife thinks he is just the most handsome thing since sliced bread, and she cannot have enough. She wants him. I was told by one of the ladies in our small group that Donny Osmond used to play Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, so that's what they always see. So Joseph was the Donny Osmond of his day, apparently, and Potiphar's wife was all about that. And Joseph says no. But it's interesting, we don't have time to look at it, but Joseph continually says no. This is not a one-time event. Oftentimes when it's replayed, it's just the one moment where she comes after him and grabs his coat, but this happens all the time, according to the text, and he continually says no. So Joseph is growing in a faith in God, in a reliance on this relationship. He is on his own. He is no longer favored, so he has to survive without the protection of his father. And so he is growing close to the only one he can grow close to, which is God. Interestingly enough, it's the second time a coat gets him in trouble. Make that what you will. Maybe no coats, I don't know. But then he is accused wrongly of taking advantage of Potiphar's wife. Potiphar, being the captain of the guard, is also in charge of the prison. So rather than kill Joseph, which he could do, he throws him in prison, probably because he likes Joseph. Joseph was a very good organizer of his industry, and for whatever reason, maybe he doesn't believe his wife, maybe he just had other inclinations, we don't know, we're not told. He decides to keep him alive and put him in the prison, where Joseph does exactly the same thing and becomes put in charge of those things. So we see in Joseph the foreshadowing of the administrative skill that he's going to be known for. It's starting to happen already. God is gifting him. We read repeatedly that God is with him. Now, I dare say, if we take a moment to be with Joseph ourselves, I wonder if Joseph really felt that. I mean, he was thrown into a pit at 17 for doing nothing, really, other than being a brother. He was sold into slavery, hasn't seen his family, and as we read the story, he won't see them again for 15 years. Now he's been falsely accused. He did the right thing, and he ended up in prison, where he will be forgotten. And that makes me think, we are told the Lord is with him. How often did Joseph feel that? And I am reminded, even at that point, simply to point out that in our circumstances, sometimes we feel as though the Lord is not with us, that he has abandoned us to our circumstances. And I would encourage you, even through the story of Joseph, to be aware that the circumstances you are in do not determine the proximity of God. And may we even just reflect on that as we continue. Joseph, of course, is thrown into prison, where he, again, has to be marshaled to interpret dreams. A butcher and a baker, and a candlestick maker. A baker and the wine steward of Pharaoh are both in the prison. And they both have dreams, one for good, one for bad. And the one who is restored, Joseph encourages him to tell Pharaoh about me, because I'm not supposed to be here. Get me out of here. And he promises him, I'll do that. Does he do it? No. 2 years go by before he does it. So 2 more years in prison. Joseph's just waiting. Been forgotten again. Didn't do anything. Not supposed to be there. But he's still waiting. Finally, we get to Pharaoh's dreams. The lean cows that eat the fat cows, and kind of a bizarre thing to imagine, if you will. And no one can interpret it. And at that moment, I believe it's the wine steward is reminded, I might say that wrong, but is reminded of Joseph. And so he brings Joseph out, they clean him up, and so he brings him to Pharaoh. And here we again get just a little insight of Joseph. Pharaoh gives him the opportunity. I hear you can understand dreams. I hear you can interpret dreams, that you are this mighty person. None of my wise men can do this, so I hear you can. And what does Joseph say? This is his chance to say, yes, I absolutely can. But he doesn't say that. He says, I can't interpret anything, but God can. So again, we see Joseph is left alone with only God. I would challenge you to consider that this is necessary for Joseph. And when we get to the end of the story, I will expand on that a little bit. But Joseph is understanding now that this is something God does through him, not that he does. And so he continues to proclaim the greatness of God to Pharaoh. Pharaoh doesn't mind. He believes in lots of gods. So if your God can do this, that's great. Just tell me what it means. And so he does. And of course, this forecasts 7 years of plenty, that will be consumed by 7 years of lean or famine or drought. And a famine, of course, in this time is devastating. 7 years in an agrarian culture with no crops and no growth will wipe out a large portion of the population. Some would estimate 1/3 to 2/3 of the population could die through this. And it will extend well beyond just where they are at, all of Egypt's control. And so Pharaoh asks what to do, and Joseph's administrative skills come back to the forefront, and he is finally pulled out of prison at the age of 30. 13 years since he was cast into the pit. And he is made second in command, the vice regent of the kingdom. He is made into an Egyptian. It says they clean him up and they give him an Egyptian appearance. They shave his head. He's probably wearing Egyptian clothing now, jewelry, makeup, whatever, all the things, the accoutrements that go along with being that role. He no longer looks like he used to look. This is important to recognize, because as soon as we go to our next chapter, we're going to find out he's going to see his brothers again, and they don't know who he is. Okay? So let's look again at our text. Actually, let me pause for a moment. One more thing I should pause on, and I'm sorry. But even as Joseph is being made into an Egyptian, it doesn't appear that he is becoming Egyptian in his own heart. We don't get a lot of indication outside of two things in the names of his sons. He is married to an Egyptian woman. In fact, she's an Egyptian priest, the daughter of a priest, of an Egyptian priest. And he gives his sons two names, Manasseh and Ephraim. Both are Hebrew names. And Manasseh means, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. And Ephraim means, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. He continues to look upon this as something the God of Israel has done for him. And he doesn't look at Egypt as this reward. I've made it. It's this land of his affliction. He's there, can't change it, but in his heart, he remains faithful to the one true God. So these are the only ways we know anything about Joseph, really, is when we see these hints. And then we get to the fateful conclusion. This is such a dramatic and incredible story in the conclusion. It's a wonder that it doesn't get repeated in more detail. So in chapter 42, we begin with verse 1. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So the famine is starting. It has been going, actually, for about 2 years, we learn later. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, and they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, "You are spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, it's the nakedness of the land that you've come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the younger is this day with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty of concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. This is why this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack." At this their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is it, or what is this that God has done to us?" We'll stop there. The test of Joseph is sometimes a puzzling thing. Why does he do this? He knows it's them. Why doesn't he just reveal himself? Why is he doing? Why doesn't he do the righteous thing and simply forgive and come out with it? Well, there's some very interesting things as we go forward when we look at this test. It's very specific. In fact, Joseph doesn't know what kind of men there are. When he last saw them, they wanted him dead. He has no idea what they want now. And so what is he going to do? He's going to recreate, step by step, the things that they did to him. And he's going to see, as he says, "By this you will be tested," to see if you are honest men. It's ironic that they say they're honest men. They've been living with a lie for 15 years. But he wants to know. So what does he do? He takes the brother, Simeon, binds him, and throws him in prison. What was happened to Joseph? He was taken, he was bound, and eventually thrown in prison. He gives them everything they need and sends them home. Now the question, are you going to leave your brother in prison like you left me? Or are you going to come back? Are you going to tell our father what happened? Or are you going to lie? Just as easily could say he was killed and never come back and leave him to rot. Are you honest men? And he waits. And he even blesses them, although they see it as a curse. They see their money and they are certain they're about to die. Now I stop here because there's a section, we'll skip that, where they have to tell Jacob, and they all see the money, and Jacob is terrified now. He's lost 2 sons, and they tell him, "We need Benjamin, or we can't get back Simeon." They actually tell the truth. So we have an indication, okay, maybe something's changed. But Jacob's not doing it. I'm not losing Rachel again. Benjamin's all I have. You can't have him. And they said, "Well, if we can't have him, we can't get Simeon, and we're stuck." And Jacob is adamant. I will not let you take my son. Not again. And so we are at an impasse at the close of 42. What will happen? In 43, we read, "Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, 'Go buy us a little food.' But Judah said to him, 'The man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' Israel said, 'Why do you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?' They replied, 'The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother?' What we told him was in answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" And Judah said to Israel his father, 'Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice.' Then their father Israel said to them, 'If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm, a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio, nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise. Go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved.' So the men took his present, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph." We'll pause for a moment there. A lot of things happen now. There are only two people that have a conversation in this story. It's Reuben and Judah. There were only two people that had a conversation in chapter 37 as well. It's Reuben and Judah. The two men that stood up and spoke are now called upon again to be the two that stand up and speak. Reuben attempted to save his life, and he kind of makes an effort at the end of 42 by offering his own children in payment for Benjamin. But Judah, the one who wanted him dead, the one who wanted to sell him, stands up and says, "I'll take the place of Benjamin. If anything happens to Rachel's son, it's on me. Take my life instead." That is a change of heart. Unexpected. Maybe. Maybe not. But it's the first insight that something maybe has happened in 15 years. Jacob, on the other hand, finally breaks down and says, "If I have to let Benjamin go, I have to let him go. And may God Almighty protect him." Jacob has to let Rachel go. He can't have her. He can't keep her. And he has to realize that. Interestingly enough, you now have 10 brothers with the son of Rachel going to Egypt with roughly the same spices that the Ishmaelite traders did when they took Joseph. So the brothers are now the traders, and Benjamin is in the place of Joseph. Its story has come back around again. And I do wonder if they start thinking about this as they're going. We begin again, verse 14. "When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, 'Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready for the men to dine with me at noon.' The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, 'It's because of the money, which was replaced in our sacks for the first time, that we were brought in, so that you might assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys.' So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, 'Oh, my lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks.' He replied, 'Peace be to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money.' Then he brought Simeon out to them, and when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when they had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the presents for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with him, and bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive." And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of the others. And they drank and were merry with him. And so it continues. The brothers are sure they're going to pay for it now. What this tells me is that they've been thinking about this moment for 15 years. They've watched their father suffer. They've known what they've done. And they've dealt with this guilt and they've hidden it. And if you have ever lived with a hidden sin, it will eat you like a spiritual cancer until you cannot bear anymore. And they fight and they fight. But they are just waiting. And now they are certain this is it. This is it. This is what we've been fearing. Even to the point where they are fearful that getting money or getting back their money was judgment. And the steward even tells them, "That's a blessing from your God. It's okay." Does it change them? No. They're still terrified. They just can't see it. And of course, being Joseph, he knows how to seat them, so he seats them according to their preference or to their age and their place in the status. And then he does an interesting thing. He gives Benjamin 5 times the amount of food. He heaps partiality on the son of Rachel in front of the brothers. And that's important for what's going to come. Chapter 44, then he commands the steward of his house, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. They had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, "Up after, follow him, or follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not for this my Lord drinks, and that this that he practices divination? You have done evil in doing this.' When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, 'Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it, he shall die, and we also will be my Lord's servants.' He said, 'Let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent.' Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, 'What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination?' And Judah said, 'What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he, also in whose hand the cup has been found.' But he said, 'Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father.' Then Judah went up to him and said, 'Oh, my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears. And let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a younger brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We said to my Lord, The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, Go again, buy us a little food, we said, We cannot go down if our youngest brother goes with us. Then we cannot go down. If our younger brother goes with us, then we will go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless your younger brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, And I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. And if you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs and evil to Sheol. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety to the boy, to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed, putting it lightly, at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of all his house, and ruler of all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. And we will stop there. Now, of course, the story of Joseph goes a little bit farther, but I think we know how it goes. Joseph's final test is probably the most poignant test. He favors Benjamin, he favors Rachel's son in front of his brothers, and then he takes him and says, I'm going to make him my slave, just like I was taken from you because my father favored me and I was made a slave. Now, what will you do? Do you leave your brother? Do you leave Rachel's son like you left me? And then the most amazing thing happens. Judah, a name that we should all know quite well because it does all flow right into the New Testament, stands up and says, take my life instead. I'll become the slave. I'll pay for his crime. My father cannot live without him. He loves him more than me. So take me. You see, Judah's not a great guy. As we read before this, we read a little bit about Judah. Honestly, all of his brothers got some issues. In chapter 38, we read a lot more about Judah, and we'll come to that in a minute. And we think, is this really Judah? I mean, Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and this is the guy? But here, Judah offers himself in the place of his brother, just as one would come from his tribe and offer himself in the place of us, me, and you. Judah finally steps into his role. We'll later even see that Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, his older brothers, are punished for some things that they did in the past, making Judah the technically oldest son, and he gets the greater portion, which is important for the future of Israel and the Messiah. Joseph, in probably his most profound statement, the one that we know so well, really shows us what he thinks and shows us his relationship, that you didn't sell me into slavery. You didn't put me into prison. God did. And what does he say? God did this to preserve for you a remnant on the earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. Now, in my Old Testament class, one of the things I teach, always remind my students, is to take seriously when John says that Jesus on the road to Emmaus spoke to his disciples, and he opened up their eyes to understand the scriptures and to see how they pointed to him. The scriptures, of course, in this point are the Old Testament. They're the Hebrew Bible. So how does it point to him? Well, Joseph, the son who was sent by the Father to his own, but his own did not receive him, sent him to die, thought of him as dead, see him brought back to life, essentially resurrected in their eyes. And he says, my being brought back to life was to preserve a remnant from this earth, and you're part of it. Interestingly enough, it's a remnant that's made up of some Jews and mostly Gentiles. Where is Christ in Joseph's story? He's all over it. Partly in Joseph, partly in Judah, but everything. We talk about the great redemption that we have in Christ, as we've heard already today. Everything from the very beginning of this book is pointing us there. It's guiding us there. And we see that in this story. But I want to challenge you with a few things I don't want to take all of our time, as we come to kind of a wrapping up. There is one more thing that happens here, and we learn Jacob comes back, sees Joseph, sees Benjamin. We have this beautiful reunion, lots of tears. And Jacob is given 17 years with Joseph. How old was Joseph when he was taken? 17. He gets those years back. Even gets to see grandchildren. And then Jacob dies, and we learn that the brothers in chapter 50 have not quite yet accepted the fact that they've been forgiven. They're terrified that Joseph was just waiting till dad dies, and he's going to kill him now. And they finally go to him at the very end in chapter 50. And in chapter 50, verse 19 and 20, Joseph says, but Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. It's an apt closing to the story, but also to the entire book of Genesis. If we look at the story, the Joseph story, in great detail, and we do see a lot of these things I wanted you to see, how in Genesis, there's a lot of stories that get replayed through the generations. It comes back around. And in Joseph's story, we see the flip. It happens in his own lifetime. But as we examine the period of time, as we said, in 4 pages, 15 years goes by. Now, we lose sight of that because we can skip ahead. I can go 1,000 years in 100 pages, and I don't think about the time. And it builds into our minds a false sense of God's timing. Because we see this happen, and then this happens, and this happens, and it seems to all fall in a very nice, neat line. But Joseph is not seeing this happen. The brothers are not seeing this happen. In fact, there are 3 characters in this story that are all being tested and tried and brought to a place where they must be brought if they are going to receive the redemption that is being offered them. And it is Joseph, his brothers, and Jacob. Joseph, we read at the very beginning in chapter 37, he's 17, tattletales on his brothers. I don't know if whether they are doing wrong and he's just telling the truth or he's just trying to get them in trouble. It's brother stuff. It could go either way. But, he's young. He's the favorite. He lives accordingly. Right. We can accept that. But he also is gifted. He's been given a position that God wants him to do. Joseph at 17 is not ready to do that. Nor could he wield it with any kind of righteous judgment or any kind of power. So what has to happen to Joseph? He has to be taken away from all this protection. He has to be placed alone. He has to be able to rely on God because it's God who's going to give him the interpretations of dreams. He has to be humbled. He has to be broken. And he can stand there and say, at the end, God meant it for good. I do wonder how often in the middle he was saying that. In my own life, I can testify that I don't always think that. But in the end, he says, God meant it for good. I would tell you that he is probably, based on the names of his sons, forgiven his brothers in the prison, possibly. Maybe, doubtfully in the pit, but probably in the prison. Maybe he got to that point and he said, I forgive them. I can't hold this any longer. But the funny thing about forgiveness, and you'll experience this in your life, you can forgive someone that's wronged you, but if you never have to see that person again, that's a forgiveness that's never actually tested. I mean, it's good for you, and I suggest you do it. You need to get rid of that if you can. But Joseph can't really know if his forgiveness is real until he meets them again. And he is in a position where he can actually judge them. It's not just that he gets to meet them again. He can rightfully and justly kill them. He can throw them into prison. He can put them through everything that they put him through, and it would be perfectly legal, and he would be right before everybody's eyes. Now he has to accept. Do you forgive them? I am not so confident in my own ability. But he does. After a testing, he wants to be sure, okay, I want to make sure that they have changed. Now, for 15 years, he's been on his journey. We don't get their journey. We don't get the story of the other 11. But we know from the story here that they've been dwelling with this. It's been breaking them down. And in fact, we come to a moment in chapter 38 where Judah has this relationship. So, in brief, Judah marries a Canaanite woman and has 3 sons. His oldest son gets married to a woman named Tamar. His oldest son is a wicked man, according to the text, and he dies. According to the law of the land, the younger son is to marry Tamar so that she might have children that would be considered his brother's children, and they would get inheritance and she would survive. This is a matter of the woman's survival. She cannot live without this. So to put that in context, this is something necessary. However, the younger son doesn't want nothing of it, so he will not produce children with her. He is judged by God and dies. There is a third son, but he's too young to marry. Judah tells her, Tamar, go to your home to your father. When my youngest is old enough, you'll marry him. He doesn't plan to actually do that. As we learn, he has no intention of having his youngest son marry her, probably thinking this one's going to die too, then I'm out 3 sons, something is wrong here. But he doesn't do it. And this is a crime. The text is kind of indicating that what Judah is doing is wrong. Okay? Tamar has to have this to survive, and Judah is putting her out to die. So Tamar gets wind of it. She realizes the youngest son is old enough to marry me, but he's not marrying me. That means he's not going to marry me. I'm going to have to do something. So Tamar disguises herself as a prostitute. Judah's wife has died at this point, and as he goes to shear his sheep, he sees her, thinks she's a prostitute, doesn't know it's Tamar, decides, for whatever reason, I will go into her. He goes into Tamar, they have relations, and she asks a deposit from him. He wants to bring her a sheep when he comes back from shearing and doing that. And so she asks for a deposit and wants his staff and his bracelet, which indicate who he is. So he gives that to her, and he leaves. And of course, she takes off all the gear and leaves. And then when Judah realizes she's gone, there's nothing he can do, so he goes home. A few months pass. People say, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, is pregnant. She's committed sin. He wants to kill her. He brings her before him, ready to stone her. This is what's supposed to happen. She should die. She's immoral. She's wicked. And she says, I'll tell you what, the person who got me pregnant owns these. And she puts out the rod and the bracelet. And he is dead to rights. Judah makes an interesting statement. He says, you are more righteous than I. And he takes care of her. He doesn't marry her or continue to know her, but he makes sure she's cared for. And that's the end of it. Judah has his own journey where he sees his sin face to face before he even gets to Joseph. So God is breaking Judah as well. Because I'll tell you, if Joseph had come back to them a year later, they don't care about his forgiveness. In fact, they had to be placed in such a position where they are so certain that the axe is about to fall that when they get forgiveness, they are desperate to have it. Only then can they really receive it, and they receive it with joy. And then we get to Jacob. And as I said from the get-go, when Jacob got married, we know this story well. He wanted Rachel. She was the thing for him. And his uncle Laban, who is Rachel's father, tricks him, and he ends up marrying her sister, Leah. He doesn't want Leah, but he agrees to work 7 more years to get Rachel. He loves her that much, so he marries Leah begrudgingly, and then works and then marries Rachel. Then they have some children, Leah first, and then Rachel, and then as well as his handmaidens, Bilhah and Zilpah, bring in more into the clan. But he's always favoriting Rachel. Even before the children, he always favorites Rachel to the point that Leah is very misused and abused, and it's tragic. And then he continues with their children, and he hasn't lost this sight of Rachel who was taken from him until we get to chapter 43. And Jacob finally lets it go. And he says, it's up to God now. It's not up to me. Why is that important? Well, for one, just on a personal level, God wants everything from us. Everything that we care most deeply about. And I'll tell you, there are things that I hold very close to my chest. And I don't want to let those go. But God's asking you, do you trust me with your child more than you trust yourself? And Jacob has to get to that place. Now, why? Because as much as Jacob loved Rachel, Rachel couldn't have kids at first. You know what would happen if she did? He would never have had children with Leah. Do you know who Leah gives birth to? Judah. The tribe of the Messiah has nothing to do with Rachel. It has to do with Leah. Jacob had to realize God's plan is not your plan. And he gets to that stage, and he has given both his sons back. He gives up Benjamin, and he gets Joseph too. And he's restored Rachel's children for 17 more years. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The one last thing, before I kind of close this out, is we think about the journeys that these men are on, all of them are on, as they come to this reunion, and we think of God's magnificent plan and how this had to work and what it took place. And I noticed that the servant tells them midway through, what you think is judgment, this extra money, God has put treasure in your sacks. Do you not see it? Do you not see it? And I reflect on my life, and my family is on a journey. I've been on a journey, we're still on a journey, but we're on a journey. And all of you are. We all are. We're all on, from birth to death, we're on a journey, but sometimes it's very specific points along the way. And I will tell you, in all of the points in our lives, I'm often always looking back and saying, that was where God was. That was where God was. And it's a blessing. It's an encouragement. It's a strength to say, I remember, now I can see what God did. But you know what? When it's going on, I'm not looking for God. I'm just waiting bare-knuckled for it to end. How often do we miss God in the moment? I want you to be able to look back and see God and see how he has worked on your life, but I don't want you to miss what he's doing right now. You need that strength to go on. You can bare-knuckle it. It's going to happen no matter what. Whatever you do, but you lose out. You lose out if you are not looking for God in the moment. God has put treasure in your sacks. No matter where you are in life, whether you are in a wonderful, blessed place or whether you are struggling and you are white-knuckling and dealing with things that you can't get through, he's doing something in you, and it is a treasure for you. And you can see it now or you can see it later. But I encourage you to look for it now. And how do I know? Because, as Joseph said, God means it for good. God means it for good. Now, I stand here. I'll admit, if you know me, I was in the military. I've had kind of a rough life. And I am a skeptic and a cynic and sometimes bitter. But God is helping with those. And so when I say that, I stand here before you and say, God means it for good. There's that other part of me who's like, how dare you? How can you tell me God means it for good? You don't know. You don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what I'm going through. How dare you? And I could tell you, I could give you a lot of anecdotes on my life and how I know that God meant it for good, but those are only anecdotes. In fact, what I'd rather do is show you how God, in just a few pages, can guarantee to you he means it for good. Let me ask some questions. Why did Adam have to fall? So that the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent. God means it for good. Why did the flood come? So that righteousness and a righteous seed would continue to be preserved upon the earth, so that the righteous redemption of the world could come. God means it for good. Why was Abraham taken from his life, taken from his family, and taken from comfort to dwell in tents and wander for the rest of his life? So that there would be a land from which the seed that will crush the serpent would come. God means it for good. Why did Jacob get the permission to cheat Esau out of his blessing by tricking his father Isaac? Because Jacob is the one through whom the seed that will crush the serpent will come, and God means it for good. Why was Judah allowed to do this to Tamar? The story is not about Judah or Tamar. The story is about their child. His name is Perez. And allow me to read this to you real briefly. And some of you might already know where I'm about to go. Ruth chapter 5, verse 18. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. Jesse fathered David. Tamar is in the line of the Messiah. God means it for good. Why was Joseph allowed to be sold into slavery? So that a remnant might be preserved upon the earth, that the seed might continue to one day crush the head of the serpent. God means it for good. I can sit here all day and I can tell you from my life how God has meant something for good. But I am not infallible. I am anecdotal, and you don't have to trust me. I pray that you will trust this. God means it for good. Turn that question to your own life. Why did my loved one die? I say that quite personally. My brother died this year. Why is this person sick? Why do I lose my job? Why am I not where I want to be in life? I don't know the immediate answer, but God means it for good. You might not feel it or even want to believe it, but that doesn't make it less true. So, I close with this. You can trust your journey, you can trust your circumstances, and you can trust your life and the lives of your loved ones to a God who means everything for good. And he has proven it over and over again. And I beg of you, today onward, make that your prayer. Let go of these things that you want to control and give that to God. You will be better for it. Let's pray.